From suicidal despair through postpartum trauma and divorce to thriving single mom of leading global wellness revolutions, Chou Hallegra, the Be Well Lady, founder and CEO of Grace and Hope Consulting, proves every wound forges unbreakable wisdom. Let's unravel her story of being a certified trauma slayer who's turned suicidal darkness into unstoppable light. Let's dive in.
Asking yourself, everything I went through, how can I turn it into a blessing for myself and for others? And it was in a psychiatric hospital, and I realized this is not, yes, I'm getting help, but I don't want to go back home and live the same life that I thought I was living, because that was not living, that was surviving.
Right. Welcome, Chu. Thank you for being on the show today. I am very grateful to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. So, you have a story of survival, basically. I know that when we talked previously, you talked about some of the things that happened in your life that actually ended up putting you in a place that most of us don't want to go. Do you mind sharing your story?
No, not at all. Go right in. So I struggle with mental health challenges in the past, to the point where I did not want to live anymore. And this goes back, ooh, 16 years ago now. My daughter was 2.5 and now she's 19. So
Oh,
16, 17 years ago. Like many people who have had unresolved trauma, it's not until a new stressor comes in their life that it actually goes and unravels all the trauma that was hiding underneath. So for me, I had my daughter, my first child, and
mhm,
everybody thought it was just postpartum depression. They're like, "Oh yeah, she'll get over it. She'll get, it's fine. She's her first child. She in a new country. She doesn't have much support." So all made sense, right? People thought I would be
right.
just fine. I'll bounce back okay. 2.5 years later, I was not bouncing back. And here, because of my own childhood trauma of neglect, abuse, emotional and sexual, and although I love my child and I was supporting her, taking care of her as much as I could, I couldn't
Right.
find the strength to do it, because being a mom reminded me of being a child who did not have what she needed. And
Mm-hmm.
now I can articulate that, but back then I couldn't. I was like, why is it I just can't seem to be, I'm not okay, and I don't know why. And so I went to counseling, and I'm glad I did. At that time I already had a counselor, because the day that I thought that I couldn't take it anymore, I had someone to call. So I called my
Oh,
counselor and explained to her, I said, I just feel like I want to die. And she's like, you need to get to the hospital, call 911, have them pick you up and take you to the hospital. I'm like, I think I can drive. She's like, no, I do not want you to drive, because, and she was right. In that state of mind, it's not safe for anybody to drive.
right.
But for me, it was, that moment that I knew I did not want to, but I felt like I wanted to. And we can go into that a little bit later. So I end up going to driving myself to the ER, to emergency room at first. From there, end up in a psychiatric hospital, and it was in a psychiatric hospital, and I realized this is not, I'm getting help, but I don't want to go back home and live the same life that I thought I was living, because that was not living, that was surviving.
Right. Right.
And so that's one of the things. But through all that journey, like getting to that moment, and then start working on my mental health, realizing that I had unresolved childhood trauma that I needed to take care of, that I needed to process and heal from. And I thought that was good. I mean, once I got to that point and I worked through that, years later, I'm like, I think I'm doing fine. And then I wasn't. Then divorce happened, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that rocked my mental health as well. Then I was kind of redefining who I was, outside of being a wife, and all the dreams and goals that we have when we get married just crumbled. And I had my identity so enmeshed, if you want, in that
Yeah.
I didn't even know who I was. And that impacted my mental health as well, and which then led to other physical health, needs, and uh, physical health challenges. So then the life that, again, I had, was not the life I was living, and I had
And
to
so let me
correct.
stop you there if you don't mind, real quick, because I want to kind of unpack some of this because there's a lot there. And a lot of our listeners are women. So we understand what you're talking about, right? Even if we didn't have postpartum depression, when you become a mother, it's almost like you lose your identity and you have to basically give up who you are, right? And so without the postpartum depression, it's a hard transition. And then I feel like they're getting better at it, but there's not a lot of support or for postpartum depression. I went through that too, and we talked previously about the pharmaceutical industry, and I don't know what your experience was with it, but I'd love to learn. I know mine was just being shifted from medication to medication to medication. What was your experience with that?
Thanks for bringing that up. So part of what led to me being suicidal, yes, I had unresolved trauma that unraveled as part of no as part of my postpartum depression, but it was also the new medication that actually was the
Yeah.
onset of that. They
Mhm.
put me, and everyone is different, but I was put on Zoloft, and Zoloft actually, if you read the disclosure of that, right, gave me suicidal ideation that I couldn't shake
Mhm.
off.
Yeah,
And
and
now and then now I actually have that as part of my allergies, if you want, or my health profile. So everywhere I go, if I'm going for migraine, or I'm going for, God forbid, something happened, I break an arm. Everywhere I go, I want people to know, please do not ever, 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 never put me on Zoloft again. And
yeah,
yeah,
and that's common. Like, I don't think people realize that a lot of these prescription medications have suicidal ideation. I read a book about a mother who had a son and he had asthma, and they put him on an inhaler. And the inhaler had the disclaimer that nobody told her about, right? She went to the doctors, nobody said anything. And one of the side effects was, suicide. And he actually committed suicide simply from taking his inhaler. Could you imagine? It's
yeah,
heartbreaking, and they don't tell us about these things.
no, no. And I think often, someone who also now works in the field, I realize that it's sad to put it this way. Well, pharma is after the dollar sign, after the
Yep,
money. And
absolutely.
I'm just going to be blunt. People are making the medication, people are selling the medication. Don't give two rats, what about your
Right,
health, about you,
right.
seriously.
No, they
And
don't.
I think a part of this, becoming and reclaiming my power, reclaiming my identity, reclaiming who I am, was also putting myself in the driver's seat of my own well-being,
Yeah,
and realize that even
absolutely.
when doctors say, "Oh, take this," I will question that. I'm known as the non-compliant, patient, even when it comes to physical health, because now I know I have a voice, and I often
Mhm.
share that. And let's say you have a headache, you go to a doctor, and urgent care, wherever you go get care, and someone might say, "Oh, just take Tylenol or take ibuprofen." For those of us who are in the U.S., we kind of know what those two medications are. But the point is, when you take each one or the other, they might not work the same for you. Only you will know if Tylenol works better for your aches, or ibuprofen does. And
Right,
so, unless you articulate that to the physician and say, "Hey, I've tried those before. One or the other works best for me," they're gonna keep shoving more stuff and you keep taking more and more. And with every new medication comes more side effects.
right, exactly. I agree 100%. And also, have you found that there's any natural remedies instead of going to these pharmaceuticals? Like, what's your experience with that? I know I had to turn to natural remedies because the stuff that they're giving you is just so bad for your liver, your kidneys, it makes you ill. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, same here. The more natural I went, the better I felt.
Mm,
And from and doing a lot of research, like again, being putting yourself in the driver's seat of your own well-being requires you to do work. It's not
right,
just saying no to everything that is said out there, but it's finding out what works best for you. And it's research, is attending webinars, attending health, homeopathic, retreats and conferences, right? Learning from people who have
right,
been using natural remedies, and then learning more about how they work together, how they impact your health, how they can benefit you, and then trying. And there's some that worked well, some didn't work. I remember with depression, but say take St. John's wort, works for you. That didn't really work
right,
well for me. And I found out
right.
later that I had a chronic vitamin D deficiency, which will
Yeah.
actually cause not just the aches and pains in your body, but also
Mhm.
impacts your mood.
Yep,
And so I started taking more supplements like that. Magnesium was helping better for my migraine and depression more than anything else the antidepressant
yep,
I've been on. So once you start, learning more and trialing, if you want, to do some try and error, you can come up with, a regimen, if you want, that works for you. And outside of just taking supplement, it's what we often call, in the pure support model, your personal medicine. For me, it's nature, it's journaling,
mhm,
it's doing things that give me purpose.
Right.
that brings me more life than any antidepressant I can ever take, right? Moving my body as much as I can, for me swimming. So all the other things that we might put aside that from the pharma does not, add to your list of prescription often
Right.
helps you more than the medication itself. And there's research there to prove that, that there's one that I read a while back about antidepressant. It was a group of people who took antidepressant every day for 3 weeks, and another group who did not do the antidepressant but
Placebo.
did 30 minutes of aerobics every day.
Mhm.
And not only the days that they, when they stopped the program, they had more lasting effect, positive effect of the physical activity they did. But then those who were only taking the medication, when they stopped, the ones who were taking the meds, when they stopped taking the meds, depression came back. And then
Yep.
it created that dependency. And then many of us been addicted to meds, not in the Bible because we're looking for high, but just our bodies start craving these
Yep.
things are not helpful, and then we can't get off of it.
Well, and the more we take, the more we need, right? I read this book. I love
Exactly.
to read, obviously. I read this book. It's by, I think it's the Laura Delano, and she talks about the other problem is that when they switch you from medication to medication, your body doesn't get the ability to acclimate, right? So if you're on like, let's say 100 milligrams, and then they just shift you to another medication, or they take you off of it because let's say you're having suicidal thoughts or whatever, your body actually needs to taper off of it. If they just completely take you off of it, it throws your brain into this spiral and sends you back into that horrible place. And a lot of the doctors will just shift your medication without tapering.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's sad. I'm not against doctors. I'll put
No,
that
of course,
disclaimer
of
there.
course. They have a
And
time and a place.
right. And it's sad that I have friends who, who are in the medical field, and it's sad some of them actually will, I know some have quit their jobs and still looking over ways of supporting people because even for
Yeah,
them, this is not what they sign up for. Nobody goes
right.
to medical school to accumulate all that debt just to be cutting corners, right? But the way our system works, where they have so
Mhm.
many patients to see a day, it's like, oh, just try this because they have to go to the next patients and not even have a
Right.
time to not just taper off, but even explain to people what
Hmm.
this medication is supposed to do, how it interacts with the other meds you're taking, right? And and what will happen if you stop taking it? Like we're not even providing people with enough education for people to make
Right.
informed decisions.
Well, and that's why working with somebody like you or working with somebody like me, we actually take the time to talk to people, right? Like, so we're not doctors, we're not, prescribing medication, but the difference is you hit it like the nail on the head right there, that we take the time and doctors get like 15 minutes a patient. That's the way that it works, especially in the United States, where they have to see so many patients in order to make a profit because the way the insurance companies pay them. And so as much as they probably have good intentions, and you can't get to know anybody, you don't know their trauma, you don't know their past, you don't know anything about them in 15 minutes.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
I would like to like kind of shift to the divorce because
sure.
where I live, it's like a 70% divorce rate. And when you're having mental health issues, on top of that, it's very hard for another person to understand what you're going through. How do you describe this place where your mind is at, which you don't even understand, right? So
Right.
what did the divorce do to you? And how did it get to that point? Was it because of the struggle that you had?
No, and I don't think it was even my mental health, honestly. Because like I said, I was working through it already. So, but I think my youngest is now 11, and we separated with my ex-husband when I was still pregnant with him, so 12 years ago. So
Yeah.
just kind of going backwards here, which means at that point I would have been out of the psych hospital like 4 years into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and my mental health was actually back then at its best. I was doing better. I was, you know, just living life, I thought, right? But also here's the part that nobody tells you. When you start healing, you start
Mm.
discovering things that you settle for, places that no
Mhm.
longer serve you,
Yeah.
and you find the strength to not put up with nonsense. And
Yeah.
when you start and you find the strength to advocate for yourself, and the more you advocate, people who are not used to the new you, which I
Mhm.
call the true you,
Mhm.
are now going to receive that well. So
Right.
there's things that I saw red flags way back when, and I'm like, we'll be fine, we'll push through it, we'll work through it, because it was one more thing I didn't want to deal with, right? And
Well, and you don't want to put your kids through that, right? There's so much
exactly.
guilt, especially for
Yeah.
women, that if you divorce, like you're putting you're being selfish, and
Yeah.
you're putting your kids second, even though they say like two separate homes is healthier than one unhappy home, right?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you grieve your marriage and the loss of your
I
marriage, or
yeah,
was it just something that you wanted to get out of?
no, I did grieve. And even when we separated, full disclosure, I didn't even file for divorce until 20 where are we 2016 to 2017. So
Hmm.
although I was separated in 2013, I still waited a good 4 years before I even filed for divorce because I wanted things to work out. I wanted to give
Right.
each person the space to work through our own junk, if you want, and commit to this. And even after 4 years, I realized I was the only one who was committed to these children. And at the end,
Mm.
like you said, we often women we hear, well, you have to do what's best for the kids, and we think what's best for the kids, putting them on on a healthy home where nobody's thriving, everybody's supporting and literally
Yeah.
emotionally, suppressing and choking each other per se. Not physically. There was no physical abuse there per se,
Sure.
but definitely a lot of emotional one going on, and verbal. And so I had to come to the point as I was healing from my own mental health challenges, realizing that this was not the life that I wanted for myself or
Yeah.
for my kids. I didn't want my sons, I have one daughter and three boys. I didn't want my sons to grow up thinking that it was okay to treat anybody this way. And
Right.
didn't want my daughter to grow up thinking that, oh, no, because you're the woman, you need to just submit and
Put
be
up with it.
and
Yeah.
put up with abuse, and let's call it for what it was. And so as hard as it was to go against, my upbringing, against my culture, I'm originally from Africa, against even the religious circle that I was part of, as hard as it was, part of me healing, was recognizing that I deserve better, that my kids deserve better, and I wanted to leave a better legacy for them. And it was
Yeah.
heart wrenching because I grew up in a broken home, as people often say. My parents only had me, and by the time I was 5, they were no longer together, and I did not
Yeah.
want to give that to my kids. But I can tell you, I'm not here to say that everybody needs to divorce. No, I want people to be whole and and well enough to make the better choices so that we build marriages and families that last. That's my dream for everyone. But when you're in one
And
that's not working, please take care of yourself, take care of those who matter to you. And I've seen people come back together after the work for their issues. That was not my case. So I got to grieve all of that, to grieve the dream that I had of my kids growing up in the home with mom and dad. I'm still not remarried yet, so I'm been a single mom for all these years. But then I
yeah.
realized, to be honest, I always been a single mom with just the fake title of being a wife.
Isn't that a big aha moment
Exactly.
that right there,
So
just
I
because
fooled
you were married?
everybody else, including myself. Right? In one way, I would say I looked like I was married, right? And
Yeah.
inside, I was just living a facade of the
Hmm.
reality that because I was hiding all the pain. So once the curtains got pulled, and people like, oh, you're divorced. I'm like, I honestly always been alone with these children.
Yeah.
And
And
I even had to sit with that, and that hurts.
yeah.
Even to give myself the grace to recognize that. But I did what I knew to do best at the time with the resources and and knowledge and support I had back then. When you know
Yeah.
better, you do better.
Yeah. Maya Angelou. Yep, that's Maya Angelou. Um, so one thing that I learned that a lot of people also struggle with is that when we pick the partner that we pick at the time and we haven't healed, we're going to pick what's familiar to us. So as we begin to learn about ourselves and as we go down our journey, we outgrow those wounds. We outgrow those, those patterns that we have that would attract us to somebody that was familiar to us when we no longer want to be in that space because we've actually healed. And so, like you were saying, like you're working on yourself, things are changing, and this person's not changing, right?
In so many ways, people, we probably heard this, where marriage is two imperfect people coming together trying to create a perfect life, right? and
Right.
and, and it's chaos for most people. And so unless we do the inner work that we need to do on ourselves, we
Yeah.
are constantly bringing our wounds to the table instead of bringing our
Hmm.
best selves. And
Hmm.
and I wish this was a different narrative. I was 21 when I got married. This is not what I had hoped for, right? This is not what
Right.
I dreamed for. And now I can say that we both came with needs that were unmet, and in trying to meet our own needs, one became a tyrant, the other one became a doormat.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
had to wake up and I can no longer be a doormat. But he has
Mm.
his own trauma that he had to work for. That's not for me to to do for him, right? Just like nobody could
Yeah.
undo my own trauma for me. I had to work for that. I realized that I matter, that I'm I'm worthy of respect and honor. And
Hmm.
and that was a wake up call that was hard to make, and realizing that waking up from that meant also pulling away, um, and eventually, being here where I am now, divorced. But looking back, and even my kids, I think my daughter was only 12 when she said, "Wow,
Yeah.
mom, we actually happier." And that was the only word that she knew at that time. Now that she's 19, she will say life is more peaceful, life is calmer. We are
Yeah.
actually thriving without the people we thought that needed to be there, which is sad to say, but just to
Yeah.
prove that sometimes you might not know what the outcome will be, but when you're putting well-being first, when you're choosing what matters, and you choosing for the future. Now it's gonna be uncomfortable in the here and now. I often ask myself and encourage others to ask themselves, how would this impact my life 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And if I'm willing to put up through temporary discomfort for long-term success, long-term thriving, love, long-term, peace and calm and blessings.
Yeah. It's you have to be uncomfortable. We only grow in uncomfort, right? And I feel like what I've experienced is that a lot of people just live their life walking through like zombies. They wake up every single morning, they have the same routine, they do their obligations, they're too tired at night to do anything, so they kind of check in on social media or watch TV to zone out, and they don't take care of themselves like you mentioned. So when you work with people, give us some wisdom that give to them to help them start off in their journey and start learning and connecting with who they really are.
Yeah, I often tell people try to start with forgetting what you've heard, what you've been taught, what society expects of you, even
Yeah.
what your upbringing was. In order to find the true you, sometimes you have to disconnect from those things first. I'm not saying cut people off like your parents, your siblings, just for no reason. That's not what I'm saying. But it's gonna go inward and ask you, so what do I want?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was
And
talking
what
to a client, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I just want to say a lot of people don't know what they want.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
when we become a mom, like you're saying earlier, we lose even more of our identity. So,
Yeah.
I remember having clients, so I know they're dealing with just parenting stress. And no, maybe not just, I know that's a lot, been there, right? And I'll ask them, I say, what do you want? And
Mm.
they're like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I remember one mom said, I don't remember what my favorite color is. I don't remember what my
Right.
favorite meal is because I've been so living so much for those kids that we love. I've been living so much for my career sometime. I've been living so much for my parents when we're caring for parents who are aging that we forget who we are. And all
Mm.
those things are important, but unless we know who we are, life continues to happen to us,
Mhm.
instead of happening for us. If
Mm.
I know who I am, then I put myself in the center, not in a selfish way, in a prevention way, in a preventive way, because you can know whether it's we call self-care, self-compassion, all of those things are prevention to burnout, prevention to stress, prevention to even suicide prevention for those of us who have had mental health challenges. The
Right.
more you focus on your own well-being first before you start pouring it into everybody's cup, you are taking care of yourself and preserving your well-being so you can do more of it. My
Yeah.
kids now are, even now that they're older, we have so much fun and they have so many more memories, even in spite of other challenges we had later on, because I've
Right.
taken the time to work on myself. I've taken the time to build, regiments, if you want, routines that shows to them that self-care is important, that taking care of yourself matters. And now I even hear them, in the boys, they're 13, 11, it's like, well, can you just please don't be in this space? I'm going to sit here by myself. I just want to watch TV alone. And I love that. It might
Yeah.
sound weird for people not used to it, but by you taking care of yourself, especially for the woman, and I'm speaking to women, your mom, especially, the more you prioritize your well-being, you are breaking, honestly, generational curses, if you want, for future generations. Because many of us, work like robots. Many of us, work ourselves to the ground because that's what we saw our mom or grandma, great-great-grandma
Right.
do, right? And we
Right.
put up with things because that's how it's always been done around us. And
Yeah.
I don't
I
think that's
agree.
what we're going to pass on to our kids.
Right. We need to change so that they can change. So as we wrap up here, give us one tool. So one tool to get started because you went from suicidal to somebody who's an inspiration. And some people just say, "Yeah, all that sounds great, but how do I get started?" So just one simple tool.
The first one, I'll think the biggest one is changing your mindset. I know that sounds big, right?
Yeah.
But the way you do that is asking yourself, everything I went through, how can I turn it into a blessing for myself and for others?
Yeah.
Because if I always see my challenges as problems, I'm going to live in the problem mentality and I'm not going to find the strength to move forward. And for me, my faith did that for me. My faith helped me to find purpose in my pain. Today, all the things I do is because I've been there. I often say I'm the person I wish I had when I was going through my hardest times, right? To my darkest moments. And when you learn to turn those stumbling blocks into stepping stones, honestly, for me and for many others, you find that joy on the journey. So maybe for you, Ryan, just maybe just blogging about your story so that it encourage someone else. And you know,
Yeah.
joining a support group where you get supported, and then you also others get get supported, through your presence there. That so that you know you're not alone. Others also benefits from you being there. So once you
Yeah.
start changing, like, with this happened to me, but I'm taking the decision now to make it work for me. That changes everything.
So it sounds like a very good first tool would be maybe join some sort of support group or join a community. If people are interested in working with you, how would they find you?
Some of the things we talked about here on my website for that when I do more individual work for personal growth and personal healing, it's under graceandhopeforfamilies.org. And then for
Grace and Hope for Families.org. Okay.
Correct. And then for those who are looking for more support, like in the workplace for your career, for your professional development, that's under graceandhopeconsulting.com.
Perfect. And we'll have all of that in the description. We're super grateful for you sharing your experience. There's more. I mean, I know that there's so much more to unpack that we can't get done in 30 minutes. So I really invite people to reach out to you on the website. Do you have other podcasts or do you blog, or what other tools do you have that's available to people if they go to your websites?
Yeah, so on the website, either one of them, you can not only look at the different services we provide, but there's blogs on there. You can also schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me. That
Mhm.
we get to talk about your specific, situation and how we can help and maybe then give you resources that are tailored, excuse me, to what you are going through. I'm also on LinkedIn, so I post, share a lot of resources on there as well. So a lot of people just appreciate even just the content I put there for you don't have to book a session with me if you're not ready for that, but feel free to utilize the free resources we have on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. All of those, you'll find the links on the website.
Thank you. Thank you, Chu, for joining us. And I really think your journey is coming from wounds to wisdom. And I really liked your last tip about joining a community, join a support group, because that in and of itself doesn't take a ton of effort and it
Mhm.
doesn't take a ton of energy. And it really does give you the space to start to learn, to grow, and get to know yourself. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. Thanks. Bye bye.
If this story spoke to you, let's keep the healing going. Visit barbiemoreno.com for my online course, Awakening Your Worth and Healing Energy sessions, one-on-one coaching, and your free healing guide. Your next step is waiting.